Channel 7 is pleased to present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interaction between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg and the host for your program today, and we're very happy to have you with us. I heard a religious leader of our community once say that the greatness of a city is in direct proportion to the compassion of the residents of that city. Or you may have also heard the statement, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." On Austin Faith Dialogue today, we're going to talk about compassion and mercy and shelter. And I think that you'll enjoy meeting the guests that we have with us for our program. First of all, I'd like you to meet a native of Ireland, Brendan McDade, who is a board member of Casa Marenella, a shelter of compassion and mercy. And then I'd like you to meet Terry English. Terry is the director of Casa Marenella, and she's going to tell us about the work that goes on there and some of the history of the Casa. And finally, I'd like you to meet a Salvadoran refugee, Jose Amaya. And he's a volunteer with Casa Marenella, and he also will share some of his experiences at this place that maybe speaks to all of us in the Austin community of compassion and mercy. Thanks to the three of you for joining me today on Austin Faith Dialogue. And well, an Irishman always has a lot to say, and Brendan, I'm glad that you're here to share with us some of that. I understand you came from Ireland, the United States, in 1966, and Austin in 1973. And Terry, I understand you've also been here for about 13 years, so you have some of the history of Casa Marenella, and maybe you tell our viewing audience of Austin Faith Dialogue, Terry, about where did Casa Marenella come from?
Well, I'd be glad to. Casa was first thought of in the summer of 1985. A small group of people who were working very hard to help Central American refugees coming to Texas, and especially into the Central Texas area, had been talking with churches, seeing what kind of support could be generated, and then they realized that perhaps the best thing to do would be to get a house and set it up so that refugees could live there. A man named Ed Windler Sr. donated a house to the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin, and they made it available to be the shelter that is Casa Marenella.
So Casa Marenella then, Terry, is indeed a shelter that has its roots in the Austin community.
Yes.
And came out of this whole sense of being concerned about others, particularly Central American refugees. The house is located where?
In East Austin, on Gunter Street, 821 Gunter. It opened just 4 years ago this month, 1986, January. And I should point out also that this small group of people was an interfaith group. They call themselves the Austin Interfaith Task Force for Central America. And their motives were very much based in their faith.
Mm-hmm. That's important for us in this program to point out how the faith is being lived out in our community. And I think this is a fine example to those who are viewing Austin Faith Dialogue to see that this is a tangible expression of the faith community to meet needs.
Yeah.
That name, Casa Marenella, tell me a little bit about that name.
Marenella Garcia Villas was an attorney in El Salvador. And she was the person who started the Non-Governmental Human Rights Commission at the urging of Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was assassinated in 1980. She founded this organization because so many people were disappearing or were being tortured or threatened. And this organization still exists. She was assassinated in 1983, and another director of the Human Rights Commission was assassinated in 1986, I think it was, in October. But the organization continues to do its work. They will photograph dead bodies so that the families can find out what's happened to relatives that have disappeared. They will interview people who have been mistreated and provide...
Have you ever been to El Salvador? Terry,
yes,
have you been?
Just 2 times.
Have you had an opportunity to visit with any of these people who are in that group and working down there, like Marenella?
Yes. I went to the office of the Human Rights Commission, but I went there first in 1988, and she was killed in 1983.
Right. And you said that one of the persons who succeeded her
was also assassinated.
In 86. So this is a very dangerous work that they're doing in a place like El Salvador.
She was a very brave woman.
And that spirit of concern about people then is a spirit that somehow became a part of the Austin community and the people of Austin, and that spirit of Marenella, of concern, compassion for others, mercy, that spirit and encouragement is being carried on today in Austin, Texas. Brendan, you came from Ireland to Corpus Christi, Laredo, and ended up here in Austin, and you're now on the board. How did it happen that you became a board member of Casa Marenella?
Well, my first contacts with Central Americans was through my work as a registered nurse with the City Health Department. I began to realize that among the many immigrants that we saw in our health services were numbers who came from El Salvador and other parts of Central America. This was back in the early 80s. And I would talk to them and try to find out why they were here and what in particular motivated them to come on such an arduous journey. And the more I learned about them, the more I became interested in understanding more about the plight of people coming from Central America, and also getting involved in doing something along with others to help them in their situation here in a strange country, and having lost so much and having such a burden of fear and pain. So I just learned about about groups who were working to help Central Americans, and I became involved with the group that was eventually to found Casa Marenella. And eventually I was also invited to join the board.
So what I hear you saying is that your initial interest came out of contact you had in your regular everyday job. You saw these people and you saw the needs and what they were facing, the struggles.
Right.
And that touched your heart, so to speak.
Yes.
And you decided you wanted to have some expression of your faith. Did you speak at all to your faith community, to the people that you worship with about this need, and did they become a part of that also, or did they encourage you?
Oh, yes. I took every opportunity I could to talk to my fellow parishioners about my experiences and what I was learning about Central America. And many of them, of course, were learning similar things through other channels, and would put what they had found out together with what I was telling them, and really we learned a lot from each other and developed a lot of increased interest and desire to find ways to work together to reach out to the refugees, and also to educate the ourselves and our fellow Americans about their situation.
Of what is happening in their lives and in their country. And
Right.
speaking of their country then, Brandon, we have a friend of yours who's also here with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. And Jose, thank you very much. When did you leave El Salvador?
I live in 1981.
In 81.
81.
And Oscar Romero, Bishop Romero, he was killed in 1980, is that
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you were there when he was assassinated?
Yes, I was there when.
It was a
there.
difficult time in your country in that time?
Yes, was difficult. Was difficult at that time, and also it's difficult at this moment too.
Uh-huh.
At that time, was a lot of friends was killed by the government, and a lot of people was missing.
You are a young man, and you must have been young when you left. That takes a lot of courage, as Brandon was saying. Why did you decide that you had to leave and become a refugee?
First is we don't have another option. If you don't leave, you can be dead. You can be killed by the military right there. And we are forced to leave. We, the Salvadorian, we don't want to leave of our country. We want to stay there with our family.
You know, I think that's an important point to make, because I think some people will say, well, why would they come to our country? What's the reason for this? And you said we are forced to leave. The conditions are, if you take a stand against the government, then is that what you're saying, Jose? You will be possibly killed?
Yes, of course, like the other 1,000 between, and also we have approved between 1980, at this moment we have 75,000 Salvadorian killing. See, thousands of life was missing in this war.
So you left your family and you decided to come to the United States. Was that your destination where you wanted to come? To Austin? Did you think you might want to come to Austin?
Was in Texas.
Wanted to come to Texas. You light up when you say Texas, and we're glad to see that smile on your face, Texas. And what did Texas and the United States mean to a young Salvadoran?
First, when we arrived to the United States, we coming with the illusions to be part of the... First is the most important is to have security for our life. Second is to have work, to have job. But we have relatives in El Salvador, and the economical situation right there is difficult, and we have to help them to survive in the war country. But also, immediately when I arrived, I have the support of the North American people, especially our friends in churches in Houston. For me, in that time was like when I come to this country, I understand the support, the love of the North American people, especially in the church when we arrived, was a Catholic church. But also when I arrived to this country, I see the situation, but the majority of the people don't know what's going on in our country.
Jose, let me interrupt. Were you afraid when you came? Was there a sense of apprehension?
A little bit.
And the faith community was there to welcome you and to give you some kind of support and put their arms around you?
Yes.
That, I think, is
that
a very
solidarity
important point.
was very important for me, but also in that moment the sanctuary movement was very strong. You see, and that was for us, like when we come here, we have two things. First, why the immigration laws in these countries deny the right to be refugee in this country. But in the other way, we see the churches, the American people. We have like a contradiction between the government positions and also the churches, the people who help us, the people who make effort to give food to our people, the people who give us solidarity, who understand the suffering of the refugee in this country. And that was my first experience, but I hear a lot of testimonies of my friends when they crossing the border and they was arrested by the migrant. They was deported to El Salvador. But in the other way, you see the people who take care, who give food, who trying to give, looking for legal defense to our brothers. And for us, the refugee, the Salvadorian, was a good experience to feeling that solidarity
I think that identity that people have with one another transcends laws and governments and boundaries of nation and another nation. And Terry, what kind of people then, are they all as wonderful as Jose? What kind of people come to Casa Marenella? I suppose they all are like Jose.
Well, in some ways they are, and of course they're also different at the same time. We have a lot of young men who have fled because they don't want to shoot at each other. Mm-hmm. Some of them have a fairly well thought out sense of being a conscientious objector, but others, they don't. They just know that they don't feel that it's a just war. They don't want to shoot at their neighbors and their relatives. Some of them don't have much of an education anyhow, and they don't even know why there's a war in their country. We have other young men who are college students who have protested injustice and have fled because their friends and associates have been murdered. We have people who come to us just because they can't stand living in a war zone anymore, really, and life is just too difficult.
No real opportunities for them, for their life, for the enrichment of their life, and so they look for, as Jose has told us beautifully, another place. When I was there with my faith community at Casa Marenella, I noticed that there were families. Do you have some families also, some children? They were there when we were there.
We have many times in the past, but right now we do not. But often we'll have very small children, really. We had a family about this time last year. The man, he was 19 years old at the time, and his wife, she was 16, and the baby was 2 months old. And he had to leave because of a
What does Casa Marenella, Terry, then mean to those people? What does it say to them?
Well, I think that it tells them the American people are compassionate, and that we have the same God, that we love them. It gives them a chance to rest. It gives them an opportunity to meet with lawyers. We work very closely with the Political Asylum Project of Austin, and we make sure that they already, if they don't already have legal assistance, that they get it.
Tell us again, Political Asylum Project of Austin. What is that, Terry?
Well, it's a project that provides free legal assistance for refugees in order to apply for political asylum, which is a provision of our law that gives a person the right to live in the United States because they've fled their homeland because of persecution, because of their political beliefs, their relationships, they're members in a certain religion or social group.
I would like to ask Brendan to maybe talk to us a little bit about what you think as a board member. We talked about what Casa Marenella means to those who come from Central America to Austin. But what does the presence of a light like Casa Marenella mean to the Austin community? What does it say to those who are watching this program? Because you're a hands-on type of guy, and you saw a need, and you responded to that as a citizen and as a faith person in our community. For those watching the program, I'm wondering, what could they believe that Casa Marenella might mean to them and to others?
Well, it's a challenge to our humanity and our compassion and our faith, and it's an evidence that all of us can do something to help those who are truly in need. And that we have different gifts, all of us, that we can offer to a project such as Casa. Many of us can help because we're bilingual, say, or because we like to teach English classes.
Do you need to be bilingual to work at Casa?
No. We like to have a nice balance among our board and our volunteers of people who have some level of facility in Spanish, so that, of course, we can work directly with the refugees and teach them English or counsel them or just be a sympathetic ear. And then there are people who can provide transportation and don't necessarily have to know Spanish, people who can help prepare meals perhaps on occasion to relieve staff,
Do you, as a board member, do you oversee all of that? That sounds like a lot of things that are happening at Casa Marenella, and I'm wondering, what do you do as a board member? What if a person out there says, that's what I'd like to do, I'd like to get on that board? What do you do?
Well, anybody who is interested in the possibility of being on the board can contact Casa, and we can arrange for them to visit with us at our board meetings. They can also, of course, talk to the director, Terry, and share with her their interests and the particular contribution they think they might have to make.
What do you think is the most important? I'm going to ask you this question, but I'll come back to you, okay? Because I'll warn Jose, I'm going to come to him first. I'd like to know what each one of you thinks is the most important mission of Casa Marenella. What is the most important priority that Casa Marenella does in our community for the people who come from Central America, but also for the Austin community? Terry, what do you think is possibly the most important thing that you do as director and that Casa does as director of Casa? What's your thought?
Well, we provide a safe place for refugees so that they can get medical care, legal assistance, a chance to get their lives in order.
Okay, a sanctuary then. Is that what you're saying? You provide a sanctuary for people, that a place to come, right? Then all those other things. Jose, what about you? What do you think is the most important thing that Casa, what does it symbolize most for you?
First is, for us, is the Casa is the first contact with the North American society, with the churches. And it's important for us, the Salvadorian and the Central American refugee. Casa provides a bridge between the American people and the refugee. A bridge not only in the way to give food and solidarity, bridge in the way to give the testimony of our people, we, the refugee, to the North American people, was to understand better what's going on in our country. But we don't want our people in our country to be a refugee. We want to live in peace. We want to live in justice in our country. And it's important for us, the Central American refugee, like me, the Salvadorians, to try to bring a message, to give a message. What kind of role have the North American Christian to stop the war in El Salvador?
So
trying to connect to convert the solidarity, the compassion of the North American society and the churches in the peace in our country.
What would you say to people, though, Jose, who would say they're illegal? These people coming in are illegal. There's a poster that we're going to show momentarily on the screen that says no human being is illegal. How do you respond to that when they say, but these are illegal?
First is we are under the God law, we are brothers, and the law is function to the human being, to the man. If the law is against the man, that definition is for us. We are human, we are Christians. We are brothers and sisters, even if we don't talk good English or you don't speak Spanish. It's important, we are Christian. We are brothers with the North American people. We don't define us like illegal. That is the definition of the immigration law. But if you asking what kind of, is our opinion, what we are, why we thinking about the North American people, we, the Salvadorian refugees, and the Salvadorian people in our country, we're thinking like the North American people, the North American churches are our sisters and brothers.
The faith communities then of North America and the United States are for you brothers and sisters.
Of course.
And these faith communities are the places where you want to say to them, we're people, we're human beings, we're brothers and sisters. We share together the kingdom of God, and that we don't want to be described as being illegal.
Of course.
You, Jose, went through a process as a Salvadoran refugee. You received your papers, is that correct?
Yes, I received papers. for relative situation. I have a relatives, and I have that possibility, but hundreds of thousands of Salvadorians don't have the possibility.
Well, you know what I hear you saying, Jose, is that really what's important, that Casa Marenella says, is that people are important.
Yes.
And that we try to get rid of all of those definitions about people being legal or illegal, but rather that people are children of God. That's what you're saying, all right? And Terry is saying sanctuary. It's a place of sanctuary for people to come and know that there is a place they can put their head down to rest at night when they need to sleep.
Also, I want to make a point that they are refugees and have a legal right to be in this country according to our laws. And I think that as citizens of the United States, we have an obligation to help them when they come here fleeing a dangerous situation. And more so, as people of faith, we have a duty before God to help them.
So you see that as a responsibility as the citizens of this country, that we reach out and give solidarity, as Jose has said, and support.
But it's a joyful duty. It's
Right.
not like taking out...
So if they come to work at Casa Marenella, it's a joyful time for them?
I think so, yeah.
I'm glad to hear
I
you
love
say
working there.
How about Brendan? What do you think is the priority of all the things that are done at Casa Marenella?
Well, I think healing is a very big priority. We are receiving people there who have been wounded and who are in suffering, and we provide healing and compassion and a place to put the pieces of their lives together again and begin to hope in the future and hope in the solidarity that we all share, the love that we share as sisters and brothers.
Sounds like a wonderful place, and I'm hoping that many of the people of our community are going to come and visit Casa Marenella. Now, if you were coming, let's say if you're coming from the north on I-35, how would we find Casa Marenella? Or let's say we're coming from the north on Mopac, and if we're going to try to go, we're going south now, how would we find Casa Marenella on either I-35 or Mopac? How do you get there to Gunter Street? Is that what you said?
Yes. You go east on 7th Street, and just a little past Pleasant Valley. It's the 2nd street to the left, past Pleasant Valley. There's a sign out front.
And there are some smiling faces that say, welcome. You know, one of the reasons I really enjoy having the privilege to do this program, Austin Faith Dialogue, is because I meet such very, very interesting people. And I think Brandon from Ireland, boy, it's good that Ireland shared you with us. And Terry, you, and Jose from Salvador, El Salvador. I've really been blessed by the opportunity to visit with you and share this time. And indeed, I think Casa Marenella says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. I hope the people of Austin will hear that message and will come and visit Casa Marenella and have the privilege to meet our guests there and to share some of that light and that mercy that God has given to each one of us. Thank you so much for watching Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace be with each one of you.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries